Hey guys, I wanted to chat today about how I actually cured myself from an anxious avoidant attachment style. Sorry, there's like a big shadow there. Let me move across. Can't really seem to get away from it, but so I used to have really bad attachment styles. I used to have both anxious and avoidant attachment styles. And I honestly believe this is a big part of the twin flame journey as well. If you really feel you're struggling with spiritual connections and you're always in this push-pull type dynamic, really have a look into attachment styles of anxious and avoidant, and you'll probably see that you have those attachment styles. And I think personally, my belief is that when we meet either a twin flame type connection or a spiritual connection, they activate those attachment styles to an even deeper level, because we actually feel them on a soul level as well. And we're mostly empaths, so we actually feel that connection, and we trigger that connection on energy, which obviously everybody does. But I think because we have had an awakening, we've become more aware of our soul, we've become more aware of our spiritual self. So we're kind of pushed and pulled by that even more than you would be in the kind of physical world. I see it as a really big ultimate challenge when we have these twin flame connections and relationships. But even if you haven't had that, like, you could still have an attachment style. And really, I do believe that it's all the same kind of lesson, and it's all the same way of working through things. So obviously, I think there's some point when we realize that we have unhealthy attachment styles and that we're going for partners that are just downright unavailable, or if we're more of the anxious person, that when we meet an available partner, we're just not interested. And what I find is that a lot of us, and I don't know if anyone knew of Leora, but she was like massive in the twin flame sphere in like 2012. And unfortunately she passed away, but I got her PDF at the time, and it was just so great. Every time I go back and read it, it's just like a wealth of knowledge. And it basically is all about attachment styles, which I later kind of came across, but she tells it in a slightly very different way. So she has a lion and an eagle, and the lion is all about energy, and the lion pushes their energy forwards and the eagle pulls their energy back. And when one is pushing, the other just like obviously backs off because it feels unsafe, it feels like it's losing itself. And then when the kind of chaser or the lion finally realizes and kind of goes back and works on themselves and focuses on themselves, then the eagle feels safer because they actually feel that energy removed. They don't feel like they're losing themselves. They feel that gap, they feel that void, and they run back in. And that's what we kind of call love bombing, when somebody comes in and they're, I missed you and all this stuff, and then they and then they pull back again. And her idea, when you show interest, and her idea was that we just have to balance our energy and come into neutrality and not push our energy forwards or pull our energy back. And that's in all areas of life. And it's being really aware of where we push our energy forwards to stay in control and where we pull our energy back to stay in control. And it's always about being in control. In her PDF, but it's very useful, honestly. Every time I read that PDF, like after a few years go by, I just sort of get drawn to it again, and I read it and I get something new from it each time. But the reason I brought that up is because she mentions the denied shadow, and the idea of the denied shadow is that you predominantly come across like a lion, a chaser, or an eagle, someone that pulls your energy back in relationships. And that once you've kind of healed or fixed that more obvious one, you will actually notice that you have both, and you have that duality within you, and you're experiencing it outside of you because you actually have it inside. And you don't just have the one that's more obvious, but you actually have both polarities of this like runner and chaser within yourself. And this makes a lot of sense to me. So it might not just be me that has this, but I noticed that I had anxious and avoidant tendencies. That yes, my natural dominant was possibly pushing forwards, but then it does depend on your relationship dynamic, because you'll find in other scenarios you're pulling backwards, or you're just not attracted to people that aren't pulling their energy away from you. And it leaves a lot of people in this constant push and pull of chasing unavailable partners, and every now and again they'll come in, they'll love bomb a bit, and the cycle will rinse repeat. And it then, even if you move on and get rid of them, you'll probably attract it in the next partner until you have fixed this inside of yourself. Now, I definitely came to the realization that I had both these patterns, and that is the first step, is acknowledging it and to stop projecting it on the outside experience and on your partner. Yes, it's super easy to do that. Yes, it's really difficult to take ownership, but as soon as you do, that's when the shifting and the work can begin. Because if you just always think you're just really unlucky and you just keep meeting partners that are unavailable while everybody else just seems to meet available people, you're not going to get anywhere. You know, there's always a common denominator. And it's you at the end of the day, that if you constantly meeting partners that are kind of breadcrumbing, hot and cold, or just downright unavailable, it's something in you that you need to fix to attract different relationships. And as much as you want to blame them, scream at them, get angry, it's not going to actually help or work or do anything. And the next thing is that you can't really fix it by just acknowledging it though, and being, because there was many years where I acknowledged it and I knew what was happening, but I was still drawn to these people. There's like a physical pull and a spiritual pull, and it's like you just cannot quit them. And that's why it's so obsessive. It's why it's so toxic, because neither partner can really quit the other, but the opposite attachment styles are just constantly rubbing up against each other and just creating havoc, and it just leaves you exhausted. And I know lots of people on the spiritual path and the twin flame journey have these type of relationships a lot, because we really want to refine ourselves. And here is how I fix that pattern within myself, is that I realized that both sides of the coin actually have the same problem, that neither of them actually really deeply love themselves. And this is really what life is all about, right? And they can't generate their own self-love. And I'm not saying that of like 100%, because I'm, still refining and fine-tuning, but it's such a relief not to have any of those old patterns. Like it takes over your life. And I know a lot of people are going to resonate with me on this, and they're going through it or they've been through it, where it just absolutely takes over your life. You either feel like completely, absolutely obsessed, or you just feel anxiety ridden all the time, and everything, like, if you're the chaser, everything revolves around the person. You're just obsessed, you can't stop thinking about them, you're constantly trying to get them to notice you. And if you're the other person, every time they move towards you, you just feel anxiety and you can't handle it. But then when they pull away, it's exhausting. You don't want to be either of these people. We all want to move to a more secure attachment style. But back to what I was saying, that I realized that neither party can actually regulate and generate their own self-worth, and they're always seeking it from outside sources. And I really started to notice that this was the key in both sides, and that was sort of the core in both sides, that neither could validate themselves or really regulate their own self-worth or their own value. And it was always seeking it outside. And that really was the big shift for me, because people just saying, drop them or move on. Of course, in yourself when something's not healthy, and yes, you can drop it and you can move on, but that's not really going to help, because if you're still being attracted to unavailable partners, or you're still being attracted to the opposite duality partners, because you have something in you that's like attracted to them, and it's attracting them to you. And if you want to attract more secure partners, it has to be within. You have to do something in yourself, so you're no longer attracted to that hot and cold energy. And trust me, when you switch, you could never go back to it. And that's how you really know you've evolved it, because you're not drawn to it. If someone does it to you, you're just not interested, and you just naturally want to move on. You don't have to force yourself. You just naturally know that you can't be bothered. It just actually feels like an effort, and you just can't be bothered anymore. And you just literally grow out of wanting to engage in it anymore. There's like a circle, back and forwards, push and pull, and you just remove yourself from the circle and you place yourself above it, and you just accept that person is going to either step up and join you, or they're just going to move on, and you're going to bring somebody in that is a lot more on your new vibrational level. But I believe that you do this by learning to regulate your own self-worth and your own value from within, and you stop trying to seek it from partners. You know, you stop changing your profile picture all the time. You stop thinking that you need to be different, or you need to be somehow more attractive, or you need to be more wealthy, or you need to be anything else than you already are to be attractive to this person. And that does take time. You're not going to do it in a week. You're not going to do it in like a month. If you've got a really strong avoidant or anxious attachment style, it is a journey. You know, it honestly took me about 10 years to get to a point where I really just feel like I actually have evolved that really unhealthy attachment style. And whilst I'm sure for our whole life we'll always be tweaking things, I don't feel like a slave to it anymore. And it does take time. I mean, there's more info out there now, things can move quicker, but it is going to take time. You're not just going to value yourself and learn to love yourself overnight. You know, it is a journey, but that really, I believe, is the way to fix this. You can't just drop it. You can't just let go. You can't just move on. You can't just pick better partners. Like, if you're resonating and pulled to certain people with certain attachment styles, you have to do the inner journey. You have to do the inner journey. And for me, I believe that's working on oneself and learning to find your own value outside of another person, completely within. And you, when I say love yourself, you don't have to think I'm the hottest person ever or I'm beautiful or anything like that, but you have to know you're you. And you're unique person, and your person meant for you is going to love you as you are. They're not going to want you any different. You're not going to have to change for them. You're not going to have to look a different way, act a different way, be a different way. It's like a total acceptance of self. I always say that more than self-love, it's actually self-acceptance. And honoring it's a spiritual soul journey, and that person is attracted to your soul and our energy, and it's that we actually need to work on. We spend all this time working on the physical person when really the key is the soul. You know, for a soul connection, the key is the soul. You want your soul to be more attractive, and your soul is more attractive when you're authentically you. You're not trying to change yourself for another person. You don't seek validation from your outside world. And you can do that by all the spiritual practices, or just being conscious of it, and just over time taking little steps to learn how to regulate your own self-worth and your own value and honor yourself as a spiritual being. And that is how I fix my attachment style. And like I said, it took me a long time, but eventually you get to, little boundaries are great too. Like, I'm a big believer in boundaries, because boundaries, as long as you're not like ridiculous with them, and you have all these ridiculous, maybe that's a bit of a judgment to say ridiculous, because everyone has things that are more important to them than others, right? But if you're looking for a soul connection, you can't have a list of boundaries that are very materialistic or to do with looks or money or status, or oh, you need to treat me like a queen. There's levels to it, but boundaries of things that really are your core values. Like, if you want a committed relationship and somebody wants to have an open relationship, you don't have to be nasty about it, but it is important to have a boundary, like a self-worth boundary. Like, that it's okay to actually say to people that that's not okay for you, that's not what you want. It's cool if that's what they want, but you don't, rather than trying to like change them or change their mind or force them or try and make them want only you because you're gonna like be more, it's okay to just walk away from them, to put a boundary down and say that just doesn't make me happy. It's not going to add to my life. It's not the kind of relationship that I'm looking for. And however much you like the person, to be able to put a boundary down that's important to your core value shows that you love yourself, and it shows that you're not willing to sacrifice your core values for anybody outside of yourself. And that's a great way of learning and increasing your self-value as well.